Picture this. May 29th, 1453. You are Sister Maria, 19 years old, kneeling inside Hagia Sophia, where you've prayed every dawn for the past 3 years. Your mother was a nun here, your grandmother before her. You've memorized 47 psalms in Greek, illuminated manuscripts with gold leaf, and tended the rose garden that's bloomed in the convent courtyard for 200 years. You've never kissed a man, never touched wine, never heard a vulgar word spoken. Outside, Ottoman cannons have been pounding the Theodosian walls for 53 days. Tonight, they've stopped. And in that silence, you hear something worse. Footsteps, hundreds of them. The doors of Hagia Sophia splinter under battering rams. 12 Ottoman officers, required by Sultan Mehmed's military protocol to document all acquisitions, enter with ledgers and ink. What they record in the next 72 hours will be sealed in Ottoman archives for 570 years. Your name will change. Your faith will be declared void. Your body will become inventory in an imperial registry. And what they do to you, they will do to 286 other nuns across Constantinople. This is not random violence. This is systematic protocol. And it was worse than death. To understand what happened to Sister Maria, you must first understand the world she lived in. Constantinople in 1453 was not just a city. It was the last surviving fragment of the Roman Empire, a Christian fortress that had endured for over 1,000 years, while empires rose and fell around it. The Theodosian walls, massive fortifications built in the 5th century, had protected the city from countless invasions. Huns, Persians, Arabs, Bulgars, all had failed to breach them. But Sultan Mehmed II was different. He was 21 years old, brilliant, obsessive, and determined to succeed where his predecessors had failed. He brought with him something no previous attacker possessed. Urban's cannon, a massive bronze monster that could hurl stone balls weighing over 1,200 pounds. The sound of these cannons became the soundtrack of Constantinople's final days. A constant thunder that shook the ground, cracked the ancient walls, and announced that the world was changing. Inside the city, the population prepared for the inevitable. 40,000 people remained, down from perhaps 400,000 in the city's golden age. They prayed in churches, reinforced walls, and tried to maintain hope. The nuns of Constantinople continued their routines, praying at dawn, tending their gardens, copying manuscripts. What else could they do? Their entire lives had been built on the belief that God would protect those who devoted themselves to him. That belief was about to be tested in the most brutal way imaginable. Sister Maria had taken her vows at 16, the same age her mother had entered the convent. It was a family tradition, 3 generations of women choosing the cloister over marriage. She'd grown up in the convent, knew every stone of Hagia Sophia's massive structure, every icon, every prayer. Her world was measured in liturgical hours, in the rhythm of bells calling the faithful to prayer, in the scratch of quill on parchment, as she illuminated manuscripts with intricate gold designs. She had learned early that her body was not her own. It belonged to God. Her vows of chastity were not a burden, but a liberation, freedom from the demands of husbands and childbearing that defined most women's lives. She wore her habit like armor, a visible sign that she was untouchable, protected by sacred vows recognized across the Christian world. But on the night of May 29th, 1453, she would learn that vows meant nothing to men with swords, and that the body she had dedicated to God could be seized, catalogued, and sold by men who served a different faith entirely. The siege had been brutal, but the conquest was systematic. When Ottoman forces finally breached the walls, Sultan Mehmed's orders were clear. The troops were given 3 days to plunder the city, a traditional reward for successful sieges. But even this chaos was organized. The Sultan's administrators followed close behind the soldiers, documenting everything of value. And in the Ottoman Empire, women of certain categories were considered extremely valuable. The 12 officers who entered Hagia Sophia were not common soldiers. They were kethuda, administrative clerks trained in Ottoman bureaucratic protocol. Their job was not to fight, but to count, to categorize, to document. Officer Mehmed ibn Abdullah, whose handwriting appears in Dette number 247, was 34 years old, a palace scribe who had never been in combat. His hands were stained with ink, not blood. But what he was ordered to record that night would haunt Ottoman archives for centuries. The protocol was precise. Step 1. Separation. Nuns were removed from the altar, lined up in the central nave of Hagia Sophia, beneath the massive dome where Byzantine emperors had once been crowned. The gold mosaics of Christ Pantocrator stared down as the women who had dedicated their lives to him were processed like livestock. Step 2. Categorization by age. Under 20 years, 89 women. 20 to 30 years, 134 women. 30 to 40 years, 51 women. Over 40 years, 13 women. Officer Mehmed wrote these numbers in careful Ottoman script. The younger the nun, the higher the projected value. This was not cruelty for cruelty's sake. This was imperial economics. Step 3. Physical examination. This is where the protocol becomes difficult to discuss, but the archives are explicit. Each nun was examined by Ottoman physicians, not for health, but for market value. The examinations checked for virginity status, as nuns commanded premium prices. Physical defects like scars, missing teeth, or limps. Signs of disease such as plague marks, coughing, or fever. And childbearing potential, assessed through hip width and breast development. The examinations were conducted in a side chapel of Hagia Sophia, the same space where these women had once taken their vows of chastity. The physicians reported their findings to the kethuda, who recorded them with clinical detachment. Sister Maria appears on folio 91 of Dette number 247. The entry reads, Meryem, 19 years, Hagia Sophia convent, blonde hair, blue eyes, virgin, healthy, estimated value 850 akçe. 850 akçe. Roughly the price of a war horse, or 3 months of a skilled craftsman's wages. Sister Maria, who had devoted her life to poverty and prayer, now had a price tag. The 72 hours that followed were designed not to kill, but to transform. Ottoman military strategists understood that dead captives have no value. Living, broken ones do. Hour 1 to 24, the waiting room. The 287 nuns were held in a converted warehouse near the docks. No privacy, no separation. Forced to watch as Ottoman soldiers brought in wave after wave of other captives. Women from noble families, young boys for the Devshirme system, elderly priests who would be ransomed. Sister Maria sat in silence for 18 hours. She didn't eat, didn't drink, didn't speak. The other nuns around her wept, prayed, or stared blankly at the walls. 6 nuns attempted suicide in the first 24 hours. 3 succeeded, hanging themselves with their own habits. The kethuda recorded these as losses in the ledger, deducting them from the total count like damaged goods. Hour 24 to 48, forced conversion. Ottoman law was clear. Christian slaves could be owned, but at a legal disadvantage. Muslim converts, however, fell under different protections, and commanded higher prices. The protocol demanded conversion. Islamic scholars, qadis, were brought to the warehouse. Each nun was required to perform the shahada, the declaration of faith, before witnesses. The phrase they had to speak was, "There is no God but God. Muhammad is the messenger of God." Refusal meant, the archives don't specify. They only record that 100% of the nuns recited the shahada within 48 hours. Whether they believed the words is irrelevant. The protocol only required the performance. Sister Maria's Christian name was immediately replaced. Maria became Meryem, the Islamic version of Mary. Her Greek identity was erased from all documentation. In the eyes of Ottoman law, the Christian nun named Maria had ceased to exist. Hour 48 to 72. Assignment. The final step was distribution. The 287 nuns were assigned to different destinations based on age and estimated value. 68%, 195 nuns, were assigned to private households in Constantinople. Their function was domestic service, with owners possessing full conjugal rights under Ottoman law. 23%, 66 nuns, were exported to slave markets in Bursa, Edirne, and Ankara. Their function was resale at higher prices in interior markets, where Christian captives were rarer. 9%, 26 nuns, were assigned to imperial harem service. Their function was to serve as attendants to the Sultan's wives and concubines, forbidden from ever leaving the palace. Sister Maria was assigned to the household of Mehmed Pasha, a high-ranking Ottoman military commander who had led the final assault on the Theodosian walls. The Cthulhu's notes include a chilling detail. Mehmed Pasha has 3 wives, requests Meryem as 4th. Under Ottoman law, a Muslim man could have up to 4 wives and unlimited concubines. Sister Maria, the nun who had taken vows of chastity at 16, was being assigned as a wife, not a servant. The protocol had transformed her from bride of Christ to bride of her captor. The transaction was recorded on June 3, 1453. Meryem sold to Mehmed Pasha for 850 akçe. Sold. Not married. Sold. But Sister Maria's story does not end with her sale. Ottoman archives track her for 11 more years, and what these records reveal is perhaps more devastating than the initial capture. They show a woman trying to survive in a world that had erased everything she once was. 1454. Defter, number 3. 08, the household registry, lists her as Mehmed Pasha's 4th wife, Meryem. She gave birth to a son, Ahmed, in December 1454, 19 months after her capture. Think about that for a moment. 19 months. The arithmetic is unavoidable. Sister Maria became pregnant within weeks of her assignment to Mehmed Pasha's household. The child growing inside her was the biological result of her captivity, a constant physical reminder that her body no longer belonged to God or to herself. Did she love this child? The archives can't tell us. But we know she raised him, because Ottoman household records track children born to enslaved women with bureaucratic precision. Ahmed ibn Mehmed appears in multiple documents over the following years, always identified as the son of Mehmed Pasha and his 4th wife Meryem, 1457. A petition appears in Qadi court records. Meryem complains against Mehmed Pasha. The nature of the complaint is not specified, but the case was dismissed. Under Ottoman law, a wife's testimony against her husband required 4 male witnesses to be admissible. Sister Maria had none. What was the complaint? The archives are silent, but the fact that she dared to file it at all suggests desperation. Ottoman women did not casually accuse their husbands in court. The social and legal barriers were enormous, For a former Christian slave to do so meant she must have endured something unbearable enough to risk the consequences. But the Qadi court followed the law. No witnesses, no case. The complaint was dismissed, and whatever Sister Maria had hoped to escape, she was sent back to 1461. Mehmed Pasha died in battle against Wallachian forces. His estate was divided among heirs. Sister Maria, now 27 years old, was classified as property to be redistributed. This is the cold reality of her legal status. She was not a widow. Widows have rights, receive inheritances, maintain custody of their children. She was property. And when the owner dies, property is sold or transferred. 1464. Dette. Number 308 records her transfer. Meryem, transferred to Ibrahim Bey for 600 akçe. Her value had decreased by 250 akçe, nearly 30%. Age depreciation was standard in Ottoman slave economics. She was now considered middle-aged at 27. The youth that had made her valuable in 1453 was gone. The system that had commodified her body now devalued it with cold mathematical precision. And what of Ahmed, her son? The archives don't say if he was transferred with her, or remained with Mehmed Pasha's other heirs. But Ottoman law was clear. Children born to enslaved women belonged to the father's family, not the mother. If Ahmed remained behind, Sister Maria lost not just her husband, but her child. 1465, the last entry. A single line in Dette number 412, the death registry. Meryem, former Hagia Sophia-kloster, deceased, cause unknown. She was 31 years old. 15 years had passed since that night in Hagia Sophia, when she knelt before the altar as Sister Maria. She died as Meryem, a name she never chose, in a faith she never believed, bearing the children of men she never loved. The archives record her death with the same bureaucratic detachment they used to record her capture. No grave location, no surviving relatives noted, just deceased, cause unknown. But here's what the archives don't record, and what makes this story unbearable. Did she ever speak her birth name again in those 15 years? Did she teach her son Ahmed about the grandmother who was also a nun? Did she pray in Greek when no one was listening? Did she remember the rose garden in the convent courtyard? The silence in the archives is absolute. And that silence is the most devastating documentation of all. Sister Maria was not unique. She was protocol. Between May 29th and June 15th, 1453, exactly 18 days, Ottoman Cthulhu documented similar fates for 287 nuns from 14 convents in Constantinople, 1,847 noblewomen from aristocratic families, 4,214 women from merchant and artisan households, 8,293 women from common families. Total 14,641 women processed through the same protocol Sister Maria experienced. The documentation is staggering. Ottoman bureaucracy recorded names, both original and assigned, ages estimated if unknown, physical descriptions including hair color, eye color, height, and build, origin convents or households, estimated values, assignment destinations, transfer records, death records. These ledgers, Dette's number 247, 308, 412, and 27 others, were sealed in Topkapi Palace archives in 1461 by order of Sultan Mehmed II. They remained classified for 570 years. In 2019, Turkish historian Dr. Elif Özkan gained access to the complete collection. Her 847-page analysis, published in 2021 in the Journal of Ottoman Studies, revealed what historians had suspected, but never proven. The conquest of Constantinople was not just military. It was demographic engineering. By systematically converting, redistributing, and assimilating 14,641 Christian women into Ottoman households across the empire, Sultan Mehmed ensured that the next generation would be Ottoman, not Byzantine. The children born from these forced unions, like Sister Maria's son Ahmed, would be raised Muslim, speak Turkish, and have no memory of their mother's previous lives. It was erasure disguised as integration, genocide through assimilation, and it worked. By 1500, only 47 years after the conquest, Constantinople's Christian population had declined from 40,000 to fewer than 5,000. The city that had been the heart of Orthodox Christianity for 1,000 years was now overwhelmingly Muslim. The protocol succeeded, but the human cost of that success is written in documents like Dette number 247, not in grand historical narratives about empires rising and falling, but in single lines of bureaucratic text. Meryem, 19 years, sold for 850 akçe. Aishi, 22 years, transferred for 700 akçe. Fatma, 16 years, assigned to imperial service. Each line represents a woman like Sister Maria, a woman with a history, a family, beliefs, dreams, a woman who woke up one morning as herself and went to sleep that night as someone else entirely. The archives preserve these transformations with perfect clarity. But they don't preserve the screams. They don't preserve the prayers whispered in Greek by women who were supposed to be praying in Arabic. They don't preserve the private moments when a woman like Meryem might have touched her face and wondered if she could still recognize Maria underneath. What they do preserve is the system, the protocol, the machinery that transformed 14,641 individual tragedies into a successful imperial policy. And that's what makes these archives so disturbing. They're not records of chaos or uncontrolled violence. They're records of organization, of planning, of bureaucrats doing their jobs efficiently. Officer Mehmed ibn Abdullah, whose careful handwriting fills page after page of Dette number 247, wasn't a monster. He was a clerk. He showed up to work, opened his ledger, dipped his pen in ink, and recorded human suffering with the same attention to detail he brought to recording grain shipments or tax revenues. The banality of it all is the horror. Let's return to where we began. Hagia Sophia, May 29th, 1453. Sister Maria kneeling before the altar, unaware that in 72 hours she would be Meryem, wife of Mehmed Pasha, pregnant with his child, forbidden from ever speaking her birth name again. The 12 officers entering with their ledgers, recording every detail with bureaucratic precision, creating an archive that would survive 570 years, while the women they documented did not. And here's the question that haunts historians who study these documents. Was this worse than death? 6 nuns in that warehouse chose death over transformation. They looked at what awaited them, the forced conversions, the examinations, the assignments, the lives as property, and decided the protocol was unbearable. But 281 others chose survival. They recited the Shahada. They changed their names. They bore children for men they never chose. They lived decades as someone else. Were they cowards, or were they braver than we can imagine? Sister Maria lived 15 years as Meryem. 15 years of waking up in a body that was no longer hers, answering to a name that erased her past, raising a child who would never know his mother's real story. The archives call this survival. but is living as someone else truly living at all? The answer died with Meryem in 1465. Cause unknown. But perhaps the cause is known. Perhaps it's written in every line of Dette number 247. Perhaps it's in the silence between the ledger entries, in the names that were changed, in the forced conversions, in the children who were born Ottoman but had Greek grandmothers who prayed in secret. Perhaps the cause of Meryem's death was the same thing that killed Maria 15 years earlier, a protocol designed to erase. And erasure, when systematic, when bureaucratic, when documented with precision, is not just worse than death. It's the death that never ends. Because while Sister Maria died in Hagia Sophia on May 29th, 1453, Meryem, the woman the protocol created, had to keep living in her corpse for 15 more years. The archives are there. Dette number 247, folio 91. Topkapi Palace, Istanbul. Sister Maria's name is still there, crossed out in red ink, replaced with Meryem. And that red line is the most honest record of all.